Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience.
Hello, everyone.
Ed,
Hello.
Nathan, how are y'all doing?
Doing good.
I'm good.
Ed to my right here.
Yes, that's right. That is your right.
I will say, I just recently had somebody come up to me and say, I listened to your podcast. You said that you wouldn't believe there was an audience unless I came and told you, so I came to tell you.
Hey,
you for
So
telling.
someone came and told me.
I won't believe that happened till you tell me their name.
I'm not going to say who it is.
Say their
I don't
name.
want- I don't want that.
Say their
They
name.
don't want, probably
Say
want
my
people to
name.
know.
Say-
Oh, no.
They don't probably want people to know. So they don't want people to know they listen to this podcast. They just felt
Probably
like they
true.
needed me to know. that they
Sponsored
listen.
by.
We are someone's guilty pleasure. I don't know about pleasure, but they're guilty. I
If
know
they're
that.
listening audio wise, I don't look at the audio count very regularly to see how many people are downloading the audio and not watching on
Not
YouTube.
watching it, yeah. I don't know. I haven't done that either.
Why don't y'all tell us if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on audio?
Information nobody cares about.
That's right.
We're trying to come up with it. Please talk to us.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have much time, so we're going to get right into
Uh-oh.
this. Okay?
Jason's got a hot date.
No.
somewhere
That's
to
not
be.
true. Now, we've got something at the end of the podcast we're going to do that's special. We got a special
Very
guest.
exciting. Very exciting.
Yes, special guest. So we need to get this set up.
Get to it.
That's right. So if you joined us this past weekend for one of our experiences online, or it sounds so official when you
It
say it that
does.
way. It's an
It
experience.
sounds like a little bit of a slight.
A little bit.
It was an experience.
It's an experience.
We had an experience
We
this
have them
weekend.
every
I
single
prefer to
week.
call them gatherings.
Yeah.
Gatherings.
All right, that's good.
All right. One of our gatherings, either online or on site, we started a new series. Well, kind
It's
of
a
new
continuation.
series.
It's
Continuation.
yeah. I think of it in terms of being, so we've been studying since the 1st of January. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And we've been talking about how that will bring the pieces of your life to peace, P-E-A-C-E. But because we don't often live with that firm foundation, our pieces have broken our world also into a mess.
Yes.
And there's a whole bunch of not loving your neighbor going on because we don't stand on that foundation. So last week, 2 weeks ago, you taught on the last part of that, love your neighbor as yourself, as being, Jesus' command. And so we, in this next part, are going to talk about one of the big pieces that is broken our world where there is currently no peace because we don't love our neighbor.
Yes.
So there you go.
so
That's
we're-
the full explanation. They're longer than you wanted because we got a special guest.
So we are talking about race.
Yes.
And probably you get all the questions, Ed, so I'm just going to assume, because I heard you say this, one of the bigger questions that I think you get when we've done this in the past is, why are we talking about this as if it's something that we probably should not talk about? And I would imagine, having talked about it this past summer, which we did, and now we're circling back to it again, some of those same questions are probably going to come up of why are we talking about this again?
The interesting thing is I have continued since that, and then we had a class, racial reconciliation class, which was awesome, I thought. And then we since then have a racial reconciliation book club that we have some of us been reading and discussing. And just in passing, I was out and somebody stopped me in a parking lot, and we had a little too long a parking lot conversation around the idea that, talking about this stuff is what's creating the problem.
Oh.
And I've heard that more than one. If I get that it might be a problem, but talking about it isn't going to make it any better, which is what you say just before the divorce. That's, I think if we just don't talk about this, honey, it will get better.
Okay. Well, and I think it's core to the gospel itself is this idea, and you mentioned it kind of even in your setup of the series we're in, right? You have people, right, who don't love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and they have broken pieces of their lives. But by the nature of the way God made us, we live together. We live with one another. We live with other people. We form cultures and societies and governments and nations. And, even on small levels, we form families and we form, neighborhood associations and everything we can. We form these little cultures. And when you get enough broken people, well, we're going to form broken families, and we're going to form broken systems and broken nations and broken governments and broken everything. And we seem to be okay talking about that in lots of areas. We're okay saying, you know what? Our nation's not getting this thing right. Our nation's not getting that thing right. We as a people aren't always getting this thing right. We as Christians don't always get this right. But it does feel often when we bring up issues of race that there's something within us, and I mean all of us, that gets a little more uncomfortable maybe than other times. There tends to be this, and that feeling of don't bring it out, don't talk about it, which we know in terms of sin, and I'm just talking about sin right here, that feeling is always the moment when you're bringing it to light where healing can actually happen. That in the darkness, sin wants to stay in the darkness where no one talks about it. Your secrets keep you sick. You want to keep those things. And so we as a church are trying to do what we want to do with every issue that is hurting people in our world and within our own souls, that we want to bring wholeness. And the first step of bringing wholeness is being able to talk about it.
And forgive me if I'm jumping a little too far ahead, but in this 3-week talk that we're going to have about this, you're going to make clear in this series that this is central to the gospel.
Right. Well, yeah, I think more so. I guess what I decided to do in this particular series, the first time, for those that might remember, we were particularly talking about. We wound up talking about politics being a problem in our world in that series, and then we ended by talking about race in that series as being a problem. But we were talking about a whole bunch of things that are causing problems, and we talked about it from that point of view. In this, I wanted to make clear how central this idea of people living, human beings being able to live in the church, in union, together, is central to what Jesus came to do.
Absolutely.
And I guess over the last 9 months, not quite 9 months, of studying, reading, talking about it, it's become crystal clear to me that so much of the New Testament is written, we miss it. We miss it, but it's written about this issue.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard to read any of the letters in the New Testament, particularly that Paul writes, that once you see it, you can't unsee it. He's continually saying, hey, y'all live together in harmony. Y'all get along. And it's all about Jews and Gentiles. It's about women and men getting along. It's about slaves and free. It's about socioeconomic and ethnic divisions that would keep them apart, and in the Roman world did keep them apart.
Oh, yeah.
And now in the church, they're coming together. And because it had been so averse to their culture to be together, he's constantly have to say to them, no, this is the gospel. We have to love each other. We have to love each other, and we're setting an example for the world.
Yeah.
And I would say, and I do by talking about this, it is what Jesus prayed. In John 17, Jesus prayed that we'd be one, and I believe at the core of this was this, that God created one human race. Sin screwed it up, and through the gospel, God was designing to get his plan back on track.
And I think you're right. We miss this so much. I know I did in my earlier life of reading just the book of Acts. If you read the book of Acts, which is the book that tells us the history of the very earliest church development, how it developed and how it grew and how it expanded, it's almost exclusively a story of how the initial followers of Jesus were fighting to get over their own racism.
Yes.
It just happens over and over and over again. There's so many chapters. It's hard to go through a chapter in the book of Acts and not see that as a problem they're overcoming.
And the reason I think I missed it so much is because it uses words that are foreign to me.
That's right.
That don't represent me. I'm not a Jew, and I don't ever think of myself as a Gentile. So those two words, they don't mean much to me. There's some people from long ago, and they're actively working at conquering racism in the church.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, you talk about all the letters that are written. You take Romans, which is for most people, and I'll say what I mean is most preachers and theologians and people who study, it is like what we consider like a theological treatise. It is about everything that Paul believed about Jesus and that. And there's this phrase that often we hold on to of, at least in our stream of Christianity, of this justification by faith. And we think Paul is just writing about what Jesus did. And we totally miss the context. The entire book of Romans is written to a church that when it began, because all things did, it was mostly a Jewish church that Gentiles were in. But then sometime in history, the Roman emperor expels all the Jews, including all the Jewish Christians. So they leave. And what was culturally, I'm talking about culturally, ethnically, culturally, a Jewish Christian church, right? They all leave. They then get to come back about a decade later. When they come in, it's now exclusively a Gentile church.
Now culturally it's become Gentile, and they don't know what to do.
And with all the different cultures, I mean, everyone knows this, the different cultures here in America between white churches and black churches. Culturally, we worship different. We have different kind of cultures within that. And now these Jewish Christians have to come back in. And so Paul begins it. And all the stuff we see that he's leading up to where he's saying all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, he's not giving just some abstract idea. He's saying, because he begins with saying, here's how the Gentiles should have known they were messing up. Here's how the Jews should have known they were messing up. You all equally have fallen short. You all equally get to be justified by faith. And then he goes into this whole section where he starts talking about, so this is what it looks like to love like brothers. And then the last chapter is him going in and saying, all right, now I'm raising money to go to Spain, which is ethnically like none of you.
Yeah.
And y'all got to get money to Jerusalem so we can do this. Y'all got to care about some people who are ethnically nothing like you. And when we read those things, most of us don't ever read the end of those things where he's given all the little, greetings to different people. Personally, we think, well, that's not important. We don't care as much about the beginning of Romans because there's a lot of sin stuff, which makes me uncomfortable. It's that middle part that says I'm justified by faith. And I think what Paul's saying is I personally was okay with Jesus and I'm getting to go to heaven. And we're missing, he's talking about what you guys do here. It's all over.
Well,
Ephesians
again, ultimately it is about us all getting right with God. But one of the clearest examples that things have changed between me and God, as we just talked about, is that relationship between me and every other human being begins to change. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't begin to change, it is an indication that I have not fully understood what God wanted to take place in me. And so the church became this living example. In fact, it just came clear to me in writing this. There's a place where, and I know you've taught this, Jason, I know it most recently, I remember you talking it, husband and wives, and we say this in weddings, they become a picture when the two become one and they mutually submit to each other. Right. They become a picture to people of what Christianity is.
Yes.
It becomes a picture of it. But when we ethnically in the church become this multicultural, socioeconomic, and there's human beings that have no reason to be together except Jesus, we become a picture as well of what God intended the world to be. And when we don't, we just look like another example of some club that the world has plenty of examples of people who believe the same thing, that hang out together and do odd stuff together.
It's frustrating. I know a lot of Christians who would stand up and completely agree with the statement that we want to see the message of Jesus in the world, life change happen in people, and the gospel taking hold in our world, in our culture, in our neighborhoods, and yet this stain on the church of racism has hindered the gospel as much, if not more, than any other thing. And we don't seem to be as interested in wanting to fix that. And I don't understand that, because I think if we would begin, like you said, if the world would see that the church is, because the church has messed this up so much, and we're going to talk about that more, but if we could figure that out as the church and start to make some
Yes.
actual change in that area, then it would help the gospel to be more attractive
And
to
it-
a
Well, if for no other reason do I believe that, not because I have seen it. I have not seen it. I haven't seen it. I believe it because Jesus prayed for it, and he said when it happened that the world would believe. And I do know that the one time it did happen, which is in the book of Acts, they literally changed the world in 200 years when that was the case. And then when we began to separate into our own little factions, we have created the mess we have.
Yeah.
You know,
But when they did what Jesus said, his prayer was fulfilled, and then we decided, that doesn't matter.
I'll tell you one little story out of my favorite book, The Patient Ferment of the Early Church, which is about the first 500
I wonder
years.
when you're not going to bring that up again.
I don't know, man. It's a great book. But anyway, there's
Obviously.
this story out of it, which about the first 500 years, and exactly what you're talking about right here, where he makes this point in one of the sections that how ethnically, class-wise, diverse the church was. It was attractive that when they would be taken to the Colosseum, there's a story of two women, one who was an older, socially elite woman, but because she was a Christian, she was able to be killed in the Colosseum, and then a young slave who had just given birth. In fact, there's this whole part of the story which is just bizarre, where they're terrified that the baby is, because she's still pregnant, so they pray, and an hour before she's going to be taken, she gives birth, and the baby is saved and gets taken by the church and is taken care of. But she still, in the process of nursing, is taken out to this young slave girl, and there's a bull that is used to kill the women, and the slave girl gets knocked down, and she's cut, and she's bleeding, and this rich social elite woman who ethnically was different than her runs over to her, because they were in the same house church, picks her up and holds her, and they cry together and pray as they're killed. And it said that there were notes from some early churches that day there were hundreds of people who were overwhelmed with emotion, that there were these women who were racially different and were socially, class-wise different, that loved each other so much they couldn't understand it. The fact that they would hold each other up and be willing to die together was so just unheard of that it won many over. Now, of course, there were many that found it completely unattractive and didn't want anything to do with that, but there were so many that did, and that was their witness. No one preached a sermon. That's how they knew something's different about these people.
Those kind of things that the church does that we aren't intentionally doing for witness, we are doing them because they're obedient.
That's right.
Right.
God is the one that draws people.
Yes.
God is the one, and we try so hard to draw people with other things without being obedient.
Yeah.
And if we would be obedient and do the things we can do to draw things, I'm convinced we would be much greater impact. So I don't know how much time you have before we go to our special guest. I do want to say this one thing. I've been saying on this podcast and other places, and particularly in our staff stuff, I am personally convicted these days of the disunity of the church and how much we are ruining the witness that Jesus intended us to have by just not being able to get along. I say it now everywhere I can. Isn't it sad that churches don't like each other? And it always gets people's attention, but ain't nobody contradicted me yet.
No, because it's true.
And I have a meeting coming up soon where I've finally gotten some other churches to agree to meet together. And, for podcast listeners, why don't y'all just pray that meeting goes well? These are even churches, we really don't have a reason not to like each other.
No.
We don't have any reason not to get along. We don't have racial divisions. We don't have any of the big barriers. I just wanted to start at a low level and see if we can start. And I'm just, I pray that something will start out of that. And so if y'all want to pray for something, that would be worth you giving some effort to for that meeting.
Yes.
It's going to happen in a few weeks.
Great. Well, the guest that we're going to bring on now is a guy that is becoming a good friend of our church, and he is doing something in our community to bring about that racial reconciliation. And we were, when we talked about this in the summer, I remember you said this, Ed, we're just looking for somebody who, who's doing this. We want to get behind it. We want to support it.
And
we
I'll
want to
say
partner
this.
with him.
I think that he is an answer to prayers I and others
I
of
agree.
us were praying.
That's right.
Whether we can continue to support Derek and let Derek lead, I mean, he may totally outgrow us, which would be awesome.
It would.
But as much as we can, we want to support him. We're very thankful for him.
So, Nathan, you sat down with Derek Teagle.
Yeah, we had a Google Meet. We're able to kind of talk about what he and his organization, Empowered for Life, are doing and what we're able to kind of partner with him about. This was in our virtual lobby on Sunday, maybe the 31st. And so some of you may have already seen parts of this, but I'll say I had to edit it down because it was so long for our virtual lobby. But there's some fun stuff in there. We talk about the NBA a lot because we're both NBA fans. And we also get to talk about some of the work he's doing towards racial justice and really just bringing unity between all the different broken pieces of our community. So I really hope you guys enjoy this.
All right. So let's take you to that right now, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Well, I am right now in a Google Meet with a great guy and a leader of an organization that we here at Community Christian have actually been partnering with for the last month and a half or so, as he and his organization are doing great things right here in our community, here in Coweta County, to make a difference in the lives of students and families and just our entire community. His name is Derek Teagle, and he is the founder and organizer. What's your role at Empowered for Life? What's the name of the organization? What is the title that you have over there, Derek?
Title is director.
Okay.
But the reality, I'm just a mentor. But the title is director.
Okay, great. Well, like I said, Derek's organization, Empowered for Life, partners with communities and partners with students within the community to really help those students be, as the name suggests, right, empowered for life. And I know we have been helping Derek and Empowered for Life by sending some volunteers to help out at some weekend basketball games you guys have been hosting. So Derek, why don't you tell a little bit about how that's been going and kind of what's happening there and how the partnership with Community Christian has been helpful to you guys?
Okay. We did a 5-week basketball league. We started mid-November, early November, and we finished up mid-December. And this was a way to get kids in the community to play basketball, but have community leaders come to them. So connect the dots where community leaders will meet with kids. They talk about basketball. Basketball was our tool to get the kids there. And once they're there, it gave us the opportunity to pour wisdom into the kids. So we stopped December the 15th, I think was the last date. We can restart back up on March the 13th. Just in March the 13th, we're actually going to do 2 weekends where we're not going to do basketball. We're going to feed the kids, and we're going to bring them in. We're just going to talk to them, like a roundtable discussion about topics. So we're not going to play basketballs those 2 weekends. In April, we're going to start back with a basketball league. But we'll meet the same kids in March the 13th, and you're going to have conversation with them, a roundtable discussion about life. So we're doing that for 2 weeks in March. Then in April, we'll start back up with our basketball league, a 5-week basketball league for kids.
Awesome. And I know that kind of the goal, because, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but you had an event this past Saturday. Well, at the point that this is probably airing, it was actually a couple Saturdays ago, but you had an event called Connect the Dots. And your hope, as you said, is to connect students with people, community leaders and pastors, people in law enforcement, just all these, and help them kind of connect the dots and see all the perspectives. Is that a fair way to put it?
No doubt. And also the reverse side of it, I want the pastors and the leaders and the mayors and the district attorneys to feel the kid spirits as well. Because I think sometimes we overlook the importance of their words. So we got to listen to them as well. Even though we're the adults, it's okay to listen to them as well and what they got going on. So it's a win-win. They're listening to us, we're listening to them, and we both listen. Once again, we can win. We can come together. But I think a lot of times where a kid is talking, some of the adults shut them down. In reality, they got a lot to say. Some stuff we might not want to hear, but we need to hear it regardless. So that was connecting the dots. Is just a way that people can hear each other, no matter who you are, whether you're a janitor, whether you're a district attorney, whether you're a mayor, whatever you are. We all got an opinion, and we all deserve to be listening to.
Absolutely. And Derek, I love the heart of what you're talking about there too, because it not only goes to the heart of what we as a church have really been working on over the past, couple of years here, but also really what the heart of Jesus' mission is, which is in order for us to really love our neighbor, we have to know our neighbor. We have to, as you said, listen to our neighbor. And so much in our world is us talking at people and not talking with people. And this is such a practical way for us as believers to get involved in the lives of our neighbors and to love them and to serve them and to learn from them, as hopefully they also learn from us. And so we love Empowered for Life here at Community Christian, and we are so thankful to be involved. And I know you said you've had a few volunteers already help you out back in November and December.
Right. Definitely had Miss Molly. Keith has been pretty much everything we have been doing for the past month and a half. They have both been involved in, but also other members as well. But Molly and Keith has been like everywhere. Like anything, everywhere I'm at, Keith is at, which is a great thing. But I love the fact of that the spirits of the church, because even when I came and visited the church 2 Sundays ago, I still felt that same spirit with the members there. So it just tells me that Pastor Ed is leading in the right way, and a lot of folks are listening to his leadership. So big shouts out to the whole ministry there, because you can tell from the top throughout the part of the ministry that everyone is on the same page, or at least everyone is listening to each other. I would say that part.
Yes, well, that's hopefully will continue to happen here at Community Christian, and as we partner with Empowered for Life, that together we can really bless this community and bless the lives of not just students, but all of us. As you said, we're learning from each other and learning how to love one another, and ultimately working towards this goal of justice, and in particular as well, racial justice, which I know the event you held back in January at the point that this is playing was really designed to help do this Connect the Dots event. So do you want to explain very briefly kind of what the Connect the Dots event was designed to do?
Well, basically, it's a 4-part seminar that we're going to do every 3 to 4 months, where we have a seminar. Our next target date is May the 8th. But it's a way that we can get so many different people in one spot. And once again, listen. Just listen. What you got going on? How can we help each other? Like, one of the reasons why I wanted the district attorney to be on this one, I want people to know who he really is, but also the open door policy that he really have, and how he really wants to solve some cases. But also, I want kids to be able to trust law enforcement officers to the point where if they see a crime in their neighborhoods, they can feel good to go talk to an officer and say, "Hey, man, I saw this. Let's solve this crime together. Let me help you." That's how we all win, where we get the bad people that should be behind bars, and we're not hiding stuff, So I've been a part of that before when I was younger, where I really want to tell on someone, or I don't want to quote unquote snitch, So I've been a part of that mindset, and I understand it's better where we're working together. I want the criminals to be in jail. I want the criminals to be go through that process of doing things the right way. Learning their mistakes. So I'm not knocking any criminal or anyone who's in jail, but we can help solve some stuff if we come together. But it's a 2-way street. They got to do their part. We got to do our part. And I shared this, that the first time I met with Buster Meadows, Chief Meadows, I told him that I really didn't feel law enforcement officers. I really didn't feel them. But I told him I was willing to develop a relationship with them. That was 7 years ago. And in the last 7 years, we had this crazy relationship, not with me and just Buster, me and law enforcement officers all together, but my group in the Newland Police Department. Now we're working with the County Sheriff Department, trying to broaden the horizon of our partnership, where we really can believe in each other, we can trust each other, and we can do some things together. So I'm very thankful for Officer Meadows joining forces with Empowered for Life. I'm thankful for Sheriff Linwood, who want to do the same thing. It's all about coming together and being on the same page. That's why I'm so thankful with your church, because we still got the same mindset. We want to help each other, help people. It don't matter if I'm black and you're white and you're brown or you're tall and I'm short. Like, let's just help people. Like, I'm with that mindset. If it's positive and you want to help someone, let's roll. If it's negative, you don't want to help nobody, I don't want to roll with you. And that's one thing I'm very thankful about talking to Pastor Ed, but also dealing with Molly and dealing with Keith, that I feel it like, man, let's just do some stuff. Like, I'm healthy, you healthy, let's do some stuff. And that's why I look at it.
And I think that's great. And I think certainly everyone who is a long time at Community Christian can understand the heart of that and wanting to help bring people together, because we know that at the core of what Jesus did on the cross, it wasn't just about bringing us together with God, but the ability now for people who are vastly different, doesn't matter race or gender or class, all people can be brought together in Christ. And in one very important part of that is building trust, building relationships, listening to one another, and Empowered for Life is doing some great work with that. So if you want to get involved with Empowered for Life, Derek's number is on screen. This is Derek's phone number. You can text him right now and say, I'm in. I want to help, whatever you got, and Derek will reach out to you and let you know what opportunities he's got coming up to help. As you said, you've already got another basketball league starting in March. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So March the 6th, we have a biggie. In November, we always challenge our kids and organization to give $1 a week for 5 weeks, and we use the money that they fundraise to give to local communities. We give to local nonprofits, even though we're a nonprofit. And this year, we fundraised almost $2,700. And we're going to use that money to build beds for kids in our community. So we partner, with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which organizer name is Tommy Webb. And we fundraised $2,700 to build beds. So on March the 6th, we're going to get together and we're going to build beds for kids in our community that don't have beds. So what we're asking for that day is plenty of volunteers, because the more volunteers we have, the easier the process it is. So I'm not a bed builder. I never built a bed before in my life, but I'm willing to learn. But I want other folks willing to learn as well. Do it to a right cause. The cause is that it's kids in our community that are sleeping on the floor. So we bought the material. We paid for that. Let's come together and build the beds and deliver the beds to kids for kids to sleep on a real bed at nighttime and not the floor. So if you're available, March the 6th, that's our build day. Feel free. Hit me up. Hey, Derek, I'm interested in volunteering. The more, the better. Once again, I'm not a bed builder, so I don't want to build all these beds by myself. So please join me and join the organization as we're going to build beds for kids in our community that are sleeping on the floor.
That right there is what we call a twofer, which is one, you get to go build beds for kids in need, but also you'll get to partner with Derek and some of his students, and you'll actually get to build relationships here. And you're not just helping kids in one community, you're helping kids in another community, and you yourself are getting help. So that's like a threefer right there. Right. You need to text Derek right now and tell him, hey, I'm in March 6th. I'll be there. He'll get you the information. Well, I hope you guys will do that right now. But before we're done, I told you guys earlier in our virtual lobby that we wanted you to join in the conversation. Hopefully you guys have been engaging right now and saying what great ideas Nathan and Derek have, how brilliant Nathan and Derek are. I hope you've been saying that the whole time. But in case you haven't been saying that, maybe you could join in right now. Derek and I are going to be answering some discussion questions here. These are very light icebreaker kind of questions. They give you a chance to interact with one another because, as we've said, this isn't meant to just be content you consume, but we're all in the community building business here at Community Christian Church, and we want you to build a community right now with the people that you're online with. So engage in these questions. So, Derek, you ready for this?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Here's our very first question. If you could have one job for 1 week, so any job for 1 week, what would it be? So you're not committing forever to do this thing, but if you could do it for 1 week, what would it be?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good
Got
question.
An idea on that?
One job for 1 week. I would like to work for ESPN. I would like to work for ESPN. Anything, whereas I'm on stage on a broadcast or on the sidelines. A sideline reporter for ESPN. I would like that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. I think for me, any job for 1 week, I would like to work in like maybe like a food truck or something where I could kind of travel around and eat food. I don't know if that maybe okay, food critic. I don't want to cook the food. I want to eat the food and just travel around, eat food, tell people what I think about it. Now, you guys hopefully are answering that question right now, but since you already brought up ESPN, and I know last time our conversation moved to the NBA, what you feeling right now in the NBA? You still got? I think you said Nets and Lakers in the finals. Is that still what you're feeling?
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, I think they're looking pretty good. I think the Nets are going to be pretty tough. I think the Lakers are going to be tough. The Hawks, man, they're like up and down. I can't figure out what's going on.
But they are better than it was last year, so that's an improvement.
Yes, everything's an improvement on last year. But I will say the Trae Young Clint Capella combo right there, that's a dangerous combo. But
that's clicking. That's clicking right now.
Yes, it is. It is. So anyway, but yeah, I was very excited. And then they were hurt during the Bucks game, so whatever. That was a travesty. But anyway, all right. Well, hopefully you guys have been answering one job you would want to have for 1 week. All right. Here's the next one. Who was/is your favorite superhero and why? So when you think of superheroes, maybe as a kid you had a favorite and you're not into superheroes now, but maybe you still are. Superheroes, big business. Now, I will say this. I heard you on at your event this past Saturday talk about Daryl Smith, who was there speaking, and you said that he was a mentor of yours, and he's the comic book theologian around here, is what he said. So are you a superhero guy too?
Not as strong as Daryl, but I was a big Superman person. Like, I love Superman. I love the idea how he transformed. I love the Clark Kent, the Superman analogy. So I would say Superman for sure.
Yeah, I love Superman. I'm a big Superman guy. I'm hoping for another good Superman movie sometime soon. I grew up reading a ton of comic books, so I was all about. So whole time Daryl was talking on Saturday, man, he had me zoned in it. I mean, I know he was primarily talking to the teenagers, but man, I was like, yes, he had me. Because yeah, I was huge into comic books as a kid. Even now, still I'm reading to my kids. I would say it changes for me who my favorite is. I'll say right now, because of my kids and who they're into, the Miles Morales Spider-Man from if you've seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, they are all about that. He's kind of the young hip Spider-Man right now, and so they're very into that. So that's very exciting because I think that's one of the big characters that they're very excited about. So it makes me excited that they're excited, and he's a newer kind of super. So I don't know as much about him as I do the ones I grew up reading. So hopefully you guys answering that question right now. All right. So the third question here is, what's your best scar story? So a lot of us got scars and stories that go with that. And we won't limit it to scars because I actually don't think I have any scars, but injury stories. So do you have any kind of like, what's your best injury story? Derek, you got one in mind?
I have a scar story and an injury story.
Okay.
The scar story is go back to my past, which is okay because that's my past. But my best scar story is a true story, and it's a scar on my hand. So it's a true story that 1999 New Year's Eve, before I transformed. So let me say that first. I was drinking a lot of adult beverages on New Year's Eve, and I decided, which I don't do ever. I'm not a dancer, but I decided to dance on top of my Cadillac. I danced on top of the Cadillac. I fell down and I scarred my hand, and my whole hand was just bleeding. But I'm so drinking too many adult beverages that night that I took some masculine tape, a lot of Kleenex and toilet paper, and wrapped my hand around and considered myself healed. Not very smart. Hand got very infected the next day, and it was a long road back. So
Wow.
Best scar story is not the best story, but it's a true story of my past for sure.
I like that. And you said you got a good injury story?
The injury story is that when I was playing basketball in 1993 in high school, I was guarding this guy from McIntosh High School that ended up going to University of Kentucky and playing in the NBA with Atlanta Hawks. His name was Jeff Shepard. And Jeff was phenomenal basketball player, averaged like almost 30 points a game in high school. And the first time we played him that year, I held him to like 12 points, which is like his lowest scoring output of the year. The next time we get ready to play them, I'm going up for a rebound, the very first play of the game, and somebody put their fingers in my eye. And I did not see nothing for the rest of the game. I was on the sideline, did not see the game. Like I was like almost blind. Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
Yeah. So I almost was blind that night, and I couldn't see anything. And that same night, somebody else guarded Jeff Shepard, and he scored 55 points.
Wow.
He was the
That's
real
intense.
deal. He was definitely a real deal.
Wow. Man, I don't think I could beat that. Those are two good ones. My best injury scars kind of story is we used to meet, our church used to meet at Madras Middle School, and I would have been like 21, 22 at the time. And I'm carrying those big, we had to carry these big school tables, the very big, heavy ones, wooden ones, back to the art room. And it slipped out of my hands and landed on my foot. And the pain was so severe. The first thought in my head was, oh no, I've ripped off my toenail. And then I thought, well, that's ridiculous. You didn't rip off your toenail. And so I continue carrying the thing, and I put it down. And when I take off my shoe, my sock is just covered in blood. And I take the sock off, and I have indeed, it just clean ripped the toenail off my big toe. And at that point in our church at the Madras campus at the time, we did not have anybody else to lead worship, and I was leading worship that day. So I took like 4 Advil, and we like wrapped it up with some gauze and some tape, and I put the bloody sock back on my foot, and I sat on stage and led worship with that, and so that was kind of fun. It's not really a scar. Toenail looks kind of weird, but
you was dedicated and determined for sure. And very dependable.
Yeah. It was like, it wasn't going to happen if it wasn't me. So, and, my wife was there, so I had to look kind of tough. But,
right.
Couldn't let it take me down. All right. Hopefully you guys answered this. Last question here. If you won the lottery, what's the first extravagant thing you would buy? So I know we all say, I'm going to give some away, and I'm going to save some, and, I'm going to pay off my house, whatever it is, all the responsible things. But you just got a whole lot of money. What's the first just thing that you couldn't justify, but you're going to spend the money on? So what's the first thing you would do? For
sure, I know the answer to this one. I want a pimped out RV. So not just a regular RV, an RV that got all the amazing things you can have on an RV, and I want it pimped out, nice paint job, nice rims, that's what I want. I want a traveling RV that looks amazing, where you see like, oh my God, who is that inside of that? That's what I want. I want
like a big old tour bus.
Yes. That's what I want.
That's right. Yeah, it makes me think of, I don't know if you ever used to watch the MTV Cribs when they would do the tour bus editions.
Yes.
And they would go in, there'd be all kinds of crazy stuff in the middle. Yeah, I like that.
I'm a big MTV Cribs guy. I used to watch that a lot.
There you go. Me too, man. That's all. I loved all that stuff. All right. So for me, first crazy thing that I would buy, I honestly, and this is how bad it is for me, it's all mood based. It'd be whatever. It probably would be, honestly, I think one thing I would buy, and I don't know if it's extravagant, I think I would buy a restaurant, and not probably for me, everyone on the Community Christian Online knows my love for Popeyes. Even though I try to eat vegetarian as much as I can, me and Popeyes, we got a thing going. So I probably would buy 6 Popeyes restaurants, and those would make some money for me. But I also would get to go in and eat whatever I want whenever I want. So I don't know if that's yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that's extravagant or not, but it's probably a little too much. So anyway. All right. Well, once again, I want to thank Derek for joining us. And of course, the number on screen right now, text Derek if you can be involved in that March 6th event. Derek, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.